Everyone, iOS 26 has just came out, and I wanted to compare it against another version of software that just came out, which is Android 16, and see how both these software versions kind of compare against each other. Now, number one, these are both betas. I would not recommend installing either one of these, but they're very interesting. Number one, Android 16 is bringing some new features, which is pretty cool. One of these newer ones is something iPhones have already had, which is called basically live notifications. So now whenever you go through and get a notification, you can go ahead and basically get them, in a live format, and they can be grouped. If you saw that YouTube notification I just got, these notifications are now going to be grouped together for similar applications, and that's something that's actually really cool. iPhones do have group notifications, but they also have like live notifications. So they've had that for a while, for at least like a couple generations, but it's really cool that Androids are now getting this. Also, if you are using, hearing devices, your phone call application is going to start getting some improvements here too. There's going to be much stronger security, which is really nice. The UI I think is a little bit different now, at least with these top bars and everything. It looks a little bit more blocky, and you could even see with the indicator at the very top, this is just a little bit of a difference right there, which is actually really cool. And Androids have this really cool thing called desktop mode, which allows you to go through and plug in your phone into like some sort of a screen, and you kind of get like an actual interface within that type of screen right in and of itself, which is something that's actually really cool. So that right there, I'm actually a really big fan of that. Now, there's a lot of other cool improvements here too. There's an adaptive refresh rate as well. There's some more multitasking tools in desktop mode, which is awesome. There's a lot of really cool stuff within Android 16. Within iOS 26, we're also getting a lot of improvements here as well. Number one, we are getting this newer kind of UI. So the user interface has this like liquid glass type of UI on it. So if you're in certain, areas like this, you can kind of see through it for better or for worse. You have a couple more customizability icons here as well. So if you click here, click on edit, click on customize, we now have this clear icon here as well, which some people may like. So there are some really cool things going on here. The phone call application on iOS 26 also got a little bit of an improvement. So now we have things like call screening, which Androids have had before, but we have this new thing called hold assist, which is also a really cool thing. So I'm curious to see how that kind of works out in the future. iMessage also got a really big update, making it more like an Instagram or like a WhatsApp, where now we can go through and we can basically change the background of our iMessage chats. So this is something that's actually really cool. You can now go through and basically, change the background and change the, background of your iMessage chats. And that's something that's really awesome. Between both Android Auto and CarPlay, there's going to be updates here as well. There's already some confirmed on iOS 26. I kind of also want to showcase some of the UI elements that are different as well on both. Now you have to remember, these two are basically stock iOS and stock Android, right? So on the lock screen on everything here, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. If you hold it down, this is basically as much customizing that we can do on both. So Androids will always have more customizability that you have on certain screens than on iOS. That's just kind of the way it goes. In terms of the notification drawers, I do like Android 16 more here. iOS 26 is just too much all over the place. I'm not really that big of a fan of this type of layout here. I feel like Android 16 has done a better job here. And even from differentiating the previous version of Android to this one, you can kind of see this indicator at the top looks much nicer to me than this indicator here on iOS 16. I've always liked it, but on iOS 26, I'm just not a fan of the whole entire UI, of at least this clear part. And I feel like Android's kind of done a better job here for the most part, in my personal opinion. You still have power buttons and everything like that. The keyboard's also going to be a slight difference here as well. So if we go here, one thing you're going to see is that on iOS 26, the keyboard is now a little bit cleaner, I would say. So it is a little bit more in line with something like Gboard on Android 16. So that was kind of another thing I noticed there as well. Another cool thing, I would say more on iOS 26, is the newer type of UI elements all over the place, especially in places like settings. With Android 16, you can see that the search bar is persistent all the way like always at the top. With iOS 26, Apple has done the same thing but at the bottom. This is a new type of language that both these are doing on Android and on iOS. So I feel like that right there is kind of a cool thing going on both. Again, if I have to pick up one, I don't really know if I have a preference, but I feel like I'm now more used to having a search bar at the bottom after using tools like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. So it's really interesting to kind of have this type of search bar at the very top. The icons themselves have been cleaned out a little bit on both as well. I don't think iOS 26, but on Android 16, it's been a little bit cleaner, I would say, for the most part, which is kind of another cool thing. If we go inside of their Play stores and their app stores, not much has changed yet on Android 16 in terms of the overall elements. Meaning, if I'm inside of a certain application, you can see right here that the bottom bar, it's pretty much been the same for many generations of Android. I feel like it might be smaller a little bit here, like it takes up less size of the space of the display. It's almost in line with something like iOS 26, honestly. But on iOS 26, if we take a look at the background here behind the application dock bar, you can see that it kind of does show you what's behind that particular app, right? That's actually kind of nice. That I actually like a lot. I don't like the control center, right? I don't like when I can see behind the control center, but I think it is a really nice touch to have whatever is behind that display like this. I feel like that right there is actually a really nice thing. So that right there is a really big advantage in and of itself. But I would also say that for the most part, it's not the biggest deal of all time. And honestly, there could probably be some situations where maybe you actually go through and maybe this is taking up more battery life or something like that. Now, another thing is back in the settings application, iOS 26 took something that Android, has been having for quite a bit of time, and that is estimated battery charging. It is really interesting now because iOS 26's battery, page looks very similar to Android's battery page. I've never seen this done before like this. I haven't been seeing too many people talk about this, but it's never really looked like this before, right? You used to have all these charts and all these other things all over the place. Now it's almost in line one to one. To give you some perspective on previous versions of iOS, and I love it when companies copy each other, especially with their best features, this is what the previous version of the application looked like, right? Look how different it was. It looked pretty different. Now look at what it looks like on iOS 26, and I'm actually a fan of it, right? So here what you can see is some differences for the most part. You do get a chart here. On this one, maybe it comes over time. You still have battery health capacity and everything like that. Within iOS 26 though, a really big feature that I'm so happy Apple took from Android is estimated battery charging. So it can now tell you how much time is left before your phone is actually fully charged. iOS has not had that yet, and Androids have had this and Samsungs have had this for years now. So I'm very happy to basically have that type of capability inside of this type of device now. I feel like that in and of itself was a really big thing, and I'm just so happy to have that type of capability when it kind of comes down to it. You still have battery usage, things like that on both. You still have battery health. If we go and click on battery health on both, I'm curious to see what it kind of looks like. So you can see it tells me right here, charging optimization is on. I guess it doesn't really tell me my battery health right now, which is kind of weird. But just know that you do have similar types of capability on both. But it is interesting with this update how much more in line iOS kind of looks like to more something like an Android device. Now, I think that's good. I feel like I love Android. I love iOS, but there are some elements that on Android I feel like I feel like iOS could learn something, especially with the control center up here. I feel like that looks better on Android. But I also feel like on iOS they did a good job at kind of taking some, taking some things that Android has done right. The only thing Apple needs to do now, the only thing they need to do is to bring split screen multitasking. One of my favorite features ever that Androids have had. Apple needs to implement that. But otherwise, that's kind of a high walkthrough of iOS 26 and Android 16. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.